So this talk really gets at why do college at all? Which is a valid question. If you're a critical thinker, anytime somebody says you ought to do something, you should wonder why that is, right? If they say you ought to believe something, you should want some evidence for that conclusion before you just leap to that conclusion or before you deny their conclusion. So I found that it's helpful because people oftentimes go to college without a real understanding of what it can do for them to just show them what that would be in some real terms economically and in some personal terms, either in terms of fulfillment or spirituality or whatever facet you want to focus in on, because all facets can be affected by going to college. And a lot of people, with the economy being what it has been, have wondered, man, is it really worth going to college? I say, well, let's find out. Let's find out. Let's go and look a little deeper and see about that. Some caveats. First off, this presentation, like the next one, involves some rough estimates based on some old statistics. Some are updated, but they make my points easier to see. They're more concrete when you can see these numbers. All statistics can be debated. If you have an agenda, you can make it look like you want to look, depending on how you pull or interpret things. In fact, you can set up certain studies to find what you want to find. Have you stopped beating your kids? Yes or no? Whichever way you answer, you must have beat your kids or you're still doing it, right? So understanding that statistics have their limitations, they also can be very, very useful. And my goal is to make very broad points, largely valid but not beyond debate. And keep in mind that accurate, up-to-date statistics are often hard to find, and depending on your agenda, they're debatable. And if you want to debate it, we can do that later. I'm not a person to shy away from debate. I enjoy it. I think it's interesting. So I'm going to try to make some points, and if you'll just ride with me, we can talk about these in detail afterwards if you want to. So in general, why go to college? More money, more freedom, and greater job security. A pretty succinct way to put it. Prove it. Good point. Let's do that. After all the time, blood, sweat, tears, and money you put into getting your degree, at the end of it all, you're going to get a pretty piece of paper. And they're not even going to hand it to you when you walk across the stage. You're going to have to come back later and get it or get it mailed to you. Right? But that piece of paper is a symbol. It's a symbol of something important. It's a symbol of an accomplishment. As we said in the last seminar, right? Nobody goes, ooh, you went to college, you got a degree, tell me what you learned. They say, here's the policy and procedure manual, right? But what you get with this piece of paper is a statement that you're saying to employers, I'm very employable. I'm highly trainable. I've taken at least 120 credit hours, which means at least 40 classes, which means probably 40 or so different instructors with 40 different syllabi. So I can take 40 different sets of instructions and get at least 70% of that done. And I stayed in it long enough to complete it. So I have persistence. I have trainability. I have educability. So that is what elevates your opportunity. It doesn't make you a better human being than other people. But it opens doors where doors might not otherwise be open. And that's what we're after here. Not to say, oh, I got a degree. That doesn't mean shit to me in terms of your worth as a human being. What it means is your ability to do what you want to do is broadened and increased. I think you ought to think about a bachelor's degree a little bit of a different way than most people do. It's an important accomplishment. But I liken it to the high school diploma of the 1940s. Back then, we transitioned from agricultural society to industrial society, and most people didn't go to 12 years of high school. They went to 8th grade and they were done, and then they either went back to the farm to work, or they went into the factories, or they went into their trades and they worked, and they made a living. So if you went to 12th grade, you actually got 4 years more school than most people, which would get you in the ground floor of most corporations, and you'd be able to work your way up, theoretically, to the top. Understanding biases existed and ceilings did exist and bias was present. That's given, but by and large, that was the idea, is you had 4 more years of education than most people did. Well, we went to World War II, we had millions of people come back, and we did right by those veterans, and we gave them the GI Bill. We didn't give them, they earned it, right? And they got to go to college if they wanted to go to college, and standards of living started rising. They wanted their kids to go to college, and more people started to do that. But more than that, more people started finishing 12th grade, right? They became the norm to get 12 years of education. Whether you do it by graduating your high school or, like some of my family and friends, getting a GED, that's the new baseline. That's the new 8th grade. You need to have a GED to work at McDonald's, right? Because they don't want you to scald yourself to death because you can't read caution hot. on the oil vat. That's serious. They're not kidding. They need you to be able to do certain things. The new baseline is 12 years of education. So if everybody's got that now, or most everybody has, and if you need a GED, go get one. By God, don't be ashamed of it. Just do it. It's something you can accomplish. That's what you need to get in the ground floor of anywhere, meaning places that don't have upward mobility as an option. So how do you distinguish yourself now? 4 more years of school. You get a bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree now becomes a ticket to opportunities. Those opportunities, again, should not be confused with human value. But if you have a person who's worked on a plant, for example, for 20 years, knows all the ins and outs of the plant, but a management position comes open, but you have to have a bachelor's degree to apply for the position, here's a person who's probably most qualified for the job who doesn't even have the technical ability to apply for it. Somebody coming out of college might get the job, and if they're smart, they're going to go to the person that knows the job and ask them how it works around here. But they have that ticket that allows them to get to the next level. That person could go back to school, scary as it is, but I would encourage them to do it if they want to. You don't have to. You can be an entrepreneur, or you can work in trades or crafts, or you can work in any field. As long as you get done what you need to get done, there's dignity in all work. This just opens pathways for you. Generally speaking, the more education you get, the more money you make. And this is an old 2000 census data, so we're looking at over a decade. High school, $26,200 a year. But that's not everybody with a high school diploma, right? That's on average. That's including the people coming right out making a minimum wage and the people who've been doing their job for maybe 40 years, 30 years, who are making maximum wages in their job. Well, you look at 2-year degree and we got a pretty significant bump. Bachelor's degree, an even more significant bump. Master's degree, doctoral degree, professional degree, right? Doctorate degree, that's what I've got. It enables me to do the kind of work I love. I love doing this. I don't have to do these seminars. I do them for free because I think, gosh, I wish somebody had told me this when I first started. This is helpful information. So you look at over a lifetime, assuming full-time work, which you can't always do. You might have to take care of parents or children, or choose to enter or leave the workforce, or be laid off and not choose to leave the workforce but be out of it. But if we can assume, on average, full-time careers over a lifetime, we're looking at less than a high school diploma, less than $1 million. Now we're looking at $2,009, much more close to the present day. High school diploma, 1.3 mil over a lifetime. Some college with no degree, 1.5. Associate's degree, 2-year degree, that's where I got to start with. Central Piedmont Community College, represent. 1.7 million. Bachelor's degree, 2.2 million. Wow, that's almost $1 million more. Master's degree, doctoral degree, and I got a doctoral degree, but I don't make that kind of bank because I'm in education. As we'll see, education doesn't pay as high. I could double my salary tomorrow going into private practice if I wanted to. But then I wouldn't get to do this. And I love this. I'd rather have the freedom to do what I want than have the money, which certainly I can use as much as anybody. But thinking of a 40-year career and using those original numbers, thinking 25 to 65 and assuming full-time work, just graduate high school, get the GED, and you're looking at an extra $5,000 a year. Little college, 12.5 a year, K. 2-year degree, extra $15,000 a year. On average, that's $600,000 extra. Get that 4-year degree and you're looking at, man, a $1.1 million increase over a lifetime. And you look at that per year, I think it helps to look at something more concrete, right? I know flat screen TVs don't cost $5,000, but when I first made this, they did. And there's some models you can get that still cost $5,000, so you can see these might be a little out of date, but just substitute in your own imagination whatever might cost this amount of money, and you get my point. Extra $12,500 a year, you can get another one of these every year. An extra $15,000 a year, you can get another one of these every year. Extra $27,500 a year, you can get another one of these every year. But you probably aren't going to get all those every year because you're going to wind up with some of these. And these are beautiful, wonderful, miracle things. Very expensive to maintain, though. They take up a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort. But wonderful things to have, right? And just because you get more money every year doesn't mean you're rolling in dough, right? I make a decent salary. I'm not complaining. Even though it's one of the lowest by comparison with peer institutions in this area, it is a very nice salary. I get summers off if I want them, where I could go do another job. I often teach and do other things, but I write. I'm here every day because almost every day I like the job I do. I research, I teach, I do clinical work and things of that nature. All right, I could take winter break off. That's like, what, 5 weeks? Nights and weekends, all federal holidays. You see what I'm saying? I'm not rolling in dough. I take a lower salary, but I'm happy to have it because I got all this freedom to do all these other things that I find fulfilling, appealing, that really make me happy. So I like to do those more than to make the money. I have a little bit of money in my pocket sometimes. Usually my wife gives it to me. But most of my money, what do you do when you make more money? You raise your standard of living, right? So I have a mortgage, and I have health insurance that costs some money, and I have a retirement account that is accruing. I have my bills paid. I get to go on trips if I want to. Doesn't mean I'm rolling in big dough, but my standard of living has risen according to the money that I make. Whether I happen to have any on me at any given time, but it also gives you job security, as I was saying. More money and more job security. Education pays in other ways. In this figure, right, we're looking at Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we're looking at the unemployment rate in 2010, right, in the middle of our biggest recession since the Great Depression. You know what it took to get us out of the Great Depression? A world war, yes, exactly. That we've come along this good is not such a bad thing. People go, man, you got 10% unemployment. That's terrible. Another way to look at it is you got 90% employment. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. It's not to say it's good, because we don't want anybody unemployed. We want to improve, of course we do. But given the global conditions and economic uncertainties, etc., we have a differential unemployment rate. Is that fair? No. Is it reality? Yeah, it is. 75% of the people have less than a bachelor's degree who are unemployed in this unemployment figure. 25% doesn't guarantee you're going to have a job because you got a doctorate degree. But in 2010, those with PhDs were 1.9% unemployment versus those with less than a high school diploma at 14.9% unemployment. So what you see on this side is rising weekly earnings, and on this side, declining chance of being unemployed with rising levels of education. Does it pay off? Yeah, it pays off. And people are like, well, I don't know, man. Over time? Really? Yeah, really. And I'm a fierce independent politically. I'm not a wishy-washy, I don't know which way to go. I have very, very deep thoughts about all things political, philosophical, theological, etc. I'm not affiliated, so I don't tend to blame one side or the other for the way that the world works. But a lot of people do, and they say, well, if so-and-so wasn't in office, it'd be this way. And they've always said that no matter who was in office, all the way back to old George Washington, who some people called Old Muttonhead, right? So you get somebody in office, here I just put this over top, right? Stimulus Jobs 2009, detailed analysis of education and training requirements from Georgetown University Center on Education and Workforce. So what we got here are trends over 1970 up to 2007, right into 2008, where our present recession started. So that's what we've got. I went ahead and just put these little labels on here. And what you see is the high peaks are recessions, right? The low valleys are times of good times. That's good economics, right? Even in the best of times, you have people who are unemployed. That happens. But what you see is in all of these trends, they mirror each other, right? But what you have on the red line is those with less than 4 years of high school accounting for a disproportionate amount of unemployed. 4 or more years of high school but no college is your yellow line. Some college, 1 to 3 years is your green line. Bachelor's level and above is your black line. The least unemployed group across time, across administrations. Nixon, well, we can look at here at 70 to 73-ish. We don't really see a recession. Republican, Ford, recession. Carter, there were some bad times in Carter's administration, right? But they weren't near as bad as some people make them out, right? And then we got Democrat, Reagan, Republican, Bush, one, coming out of recession, right? Democrat, out of a recession, falls over time. G.W. Bush, moderate. And then, of course, Republican, we got Democrat in the worst times that we've ever seen, but that was heading that way before that person took office. So my point simply is that depending on any economic circumstance, whatever political persuasion you are, that is perfectly your right to be it. But know this, education helps. in all economic circumstances if you want a job. That's pretty much beyond debate from my point of view. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed a job, and it doesn't mean you're going to be guaranteed the job you want. That's where career planning comes in. And people don't do that. I didn't do that. That's why the next seminar is on career planning, to help make people aware that they need to do it as early as possible. And you'll see that there's differences in pay in the types of fields you go into. So agriculture, natural sciences over here, natural resources, arts lower, biology medium, business higher, communications medium, computers and mathematics higher on average. But if you go to this website, it actually breaks out lots of different job categories in the range from the bottom to the top. Engineering the highest, depending on what kind of engineering you're doing. Health, liberal arts, psychology and social work, and of course education is always pretty low. People talk a big game about education being a real value. We need it in this country, and it's very important. But typically, if something's very important, you invest in it. And when you look at what is paid teachers and put into our educational system, you'll find it's oftentimes one of the lowest priorities. So rhetoric is one thing, and data is another thing. But you getting education pays. You finding a field you love matters, because lots of people have jobs that pay well that they hate. You don't want to end at this process, get a bachelor's degree, and enter a job you don't want to go to every day. The way I like to say it, if you do what you love for a living, you don't work a day in your life. The worst day being a psychologist for me is better than my best day being a construction worker. Other people like working outside. Other people like building things with their hands. For them, that might be a calling, and for them, that might be way better than a desk job. But for me, this is my thing. I like this, and I can only do this if I have certain types of education. Doesn't make me a better person. It just enables me to be qualified for consideration. Well, why more money and greater job security? Because more education means you have more knowledge in a smaller area, which equates to expertise that many others will not have. Graduate, and I forget the date on this one, but relatively speaking, the proportion remains the same. You graduate a lot of bachelor's degrees compared to the number of master's degrees compared to the number of PhDs you have. Like I was saying about mechanics, right? Or plumbers. If you get a lot of knowledge in a small area, you become an expert and people seek you out. Well, to know psychology at the level I need to know it, I have to have this much education to become an expert where people seek me out. And that's why they seek me out, not because I'm a better person, but because I have more knowledge about one thing, less. And what is rare is valuable, scarcity. So we got the governor's drive to 55 in Tennessee. That's a good and noble thing to get 55% of Tennesseans up to the level of some kind of education post high school, whether it's vocational, community college, bachelor's degree, post-bachelor's, whatever. That's great. But what you see over here is in 2009, we were 41st in the nation in terms of bachelor's degrees. Well, we look over here, the share of 25 to 32-year-olds with at least a bachelor's degree by different generations. Then in 1965, 13% had it. Remember, not many people did that. Moving up into 79, we see this giant leap in a little over 10 years. And then it holds steady, and now we got in 2013, 34% of people in that age range, 25 to 32, holding a bachelor's degree, but it ain't 34% in Tennessee. It's a little less than 1 in 4 in Tennessee, which means you have something that not a lot of people have. Doesn't make you better. It just means you have something that is valuable because very few people also possess it. It would be great if everybody possessed that level of education, but not everybody needs to possess it. It depends on what kind of work you want to do, what kind of career you want for yourself, as to whether this would be beneficial for you. But certainly it's not something that everybody's doing. More of it would be better, but the more people who do it, it becomes the new baseline. And then you have to go to the next level to distinguish yourself. And job satisfaction is not the same thing as making money. You can make money doing a lot of stuff, right? Depending on what your calling is. Mental health and substance abuse, well, that's in my area. I find that fascinating. The average is 37,000, 38,000, right? And I'm looking at some statistics from 2006 and 2007 here. Social science research assistant, that's in my domain, 35,000 on average. Social workers, 44,000 on average, right? Those are decent jobs. They pay decent. And you could do something if you're inclined to do that that's fulfilling. It doesn't mean you should have to do that, but if you didn't want to, carpenters make an average of $39,000 a year. I was a carpenter. I could make good money with the trades I knew, right? I didn't like them. Drywall, ceiling tile, I did both of those. Metal stud framing, sheetrock hanging, and I could even do finishing, although I hate it. I hated all of it. It's kind of nice to be able to do it because I can build stuff on my own house, and that's fulfilling, but doing it day in, day out was not fulfilling for me. And I was not a master of my trade. The people who taught me were masters of their trade, and they were awesome. Make $38,000, right? Floor layers, I laid a lot of floors. I put down a lot of sheet vinyl, a lot of block tile, a little bit of ceramic tile, occasionally a hardwood floor. But that was not my passion, but you can make decent money doing it. Restaurant waitstaff, the average is 17 grand. You know a lot of people who go, man, I got a bachelor's degree, but I'm waiting tables. Well, that's probably because either the economy doesn't support employment in that particular area in which you got your degree, or you didn't do sufficient career planning to get the job you want in your area. But you can wait tables. I know a lot of great people who wait tables. It's not about the money you make. It's about doing what you want to do. Some people are people, and they like doing it. That's fine. That's great. There's no shame in any of that. But even if you go on and get that bachelor's degree, right, doesn't mean you have automatic unlimited freedom and unlimited cash. There are some parameters that you have to be mindful of, and that's why we have that next talk, the how to plan a career talk, or why you should do career planning now. Some summarizing here, you know, there's just not a guarantee that you're going to get the job you want. You're more likely to get a job. My daughter got her bachelor's degree, and as I said in the last talk, she had withdrew from college when she wasn't doing well, took W's instead of F's, went out and worked a job that she didn't particularly love, eventually came back because she wanted the education, not just because she felt compelled to go to college because that's what she'd heard all her life, made A's and B's, and now she's working as a secretary at an elementary school. Well, that's fulfilling work, believe it or not, right? She's got great relationships with these kids and these families. Some of her co-workers are good friends, right? But she's also living in a town that's populated with college students, right? It's Bloomington, IU, right? People are graduating all the time, and they're what? Staying in town and taking all those jobs. But guess what? Getting that secretary's job at a point of deep recession, I bet having a bachelor's degree helped her get that job, right? So it may not have been her dream job, but here she is now thinking about going to graduate school because she's starting to figure out what she loves, and because she did well in undergrad, that is now an option. So looking at being adaptive is really an important point. Being flexible, being adaptive, and developing critical thinking skills and figuring out the scenarios. What kind of job would you have? What kind of opportunities would exist? So what we see is this over here, median annual earnings among full-time workers aged 25 to 32 in 2012 dollars. So we're looking at generational, silents, early boomers, late boomers, Gen X's and millennials, right? And what you see is for the bachelor's degree, the money's going up. What you see for the silents is went up for everybody a little bit, but now below, what do you got here? 2-year degree in some college, and the bottom is high school graduate. It's going down. It's dividing. It's splitting. The disparity is getting greater, not smaller. We're showing another higher value in this higher education, right? You look over here in this widening gap, young adults by educational attainment. And look over here, the share in poverty. So times are changing. Economic well-being of 25 to 32-year-olds. And over here on this column, we've got high school graduates. Over here, we've got 2-year degree, some college. Here's bachelor's degree, and there's everybody together. And what we're looking at now in terms of the different generations, what we saw is the people who had less than a high school, had a high school diploma. About 7% were in poverty back in the day, right? And now 22%. That's triple, right? Here we have 2-year degree, 6 to 15, a little over double. And here we have 3 to 6. It's doubled, but it's still the baseline for the 2 years to start with. Times change. You got to learn to roll with the changes. They're changing now faster than they've ever changed. Adaptivity oftentimes means your job that you thought was a lifetime job doesn't exist anymore, and you need to retrain or do something else. And that is a scary place to be if you've invested a lot of time and a lot of effort into making a living doing something you identify with, and that evaporates. That is a challenge, not to be underestimated in the stress that it puts on the person and the family. But man, it does pay to go get more education. On average, it's going to be something that will pay you back over and over and over again. And that's all we have for that particular talk.